Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet Your Masters of D&D. We have something different for you guys. I actually have Damian from Adventures in Erylia. Thank you, Damian. It's Damian, right?
Yes, it's Damian.
Okay, for coming on. So a little thing about the show is if you haven't seen it or this is your first time because we have the podcast on, then I'll give you a little tidbit. This basically is just introduce to people who have been playing D&D, people who are new to D&D, but the people who run the games, the masters, the GMs, the DMs, the lore masters for people who are playing the Lord of the Rings. So, thank you, Damian, for coming on again. Short notice. I think we only asked you like last week, so we got right into it. So we'll just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's I'm glad I can help you out a little bit here.
Yeah. So what give us a background of the podcast, or your podcast exactly.
So Adventures in Erylia is something that started about a year ago at the beginning of 2017. I had been playing Pathfinder and then 5th edition with a group of friends, and eventually when I had a kid and life got a little crazy, I wasn't able to hang out with them very much, and I'd always wanted to run my own game. So I work a night shift job. I work in a machine shop, and like 2 years ago, I started just sketching out a world. I started writing down some lore for a world, and my fiance is really into Critical Role, and one of her coworkers happened to see her watching Critical Role on one of their breaks. And so they were like, oh, we've got this connection here because they both like Critical Role. And then this coworker, her boyfriend, is someone that hasn't played D&D in a while, but used to play 3.5. And they also watch Critical Role together. So it kind of formed this connection where the two of them, and then through relation, the boyfriend, we started talking about maybe getting together every once in a while to run a game. And then another one of their coworkers that's about our age and also really into games and stuff, but was never into like role-playing games, kind of got a little jealous and wanted in on this too. So we started having people over at our place where, we'd have the kid here. So we started bringing people to us. And originally one of the coworkers just wasn't like super into wanting to role play or anything. So it was mostly a way for her boyfriend to connect with us, and she was just going to do her own thing until we started rolling characters, and she wanted to get on rolling a character too because she saw how much fun we were all having. And originally it wasn't supposed to be a podcast. It was just going to be a campaign that we played every once in a while. But I listened to a lot of D&D podcasts, a lot of role-playing podcasts. So when we started getting into this, I'm like, hey guys, how do you feel about doing a podcast with this? And so our very first session together, we sat a phone down in the table and recorded our session. Audio sounded terrible. You can't find that unless you go dig through our Patreon. And then we switched that phone out for a Blue Yeti because it was something that I could get really quick because they're only $100. So we got that Blue Yeti, threw that in the table, and started recording. Sounded terrible still. Those episodes also don't exist anymore. And about 6 months ago, I was like, okay, this isn't cutting what I want to do. I listen to a lot of these podcasts. I want to do something that other people are going to want to listen to, not just something that, oh yeah, we record stuff and you guys can listen if you want. I wanted something that people could listen to and it would sound good. Mm-hmm. So I started buying a bunch of new audio gear. And so just in the last 6 months, they got familiar with my world. We got familiar with playing as a group. We got new audio gear. And as of September 2017, we started recording again. And now the show is kind of taking off, and hopefully there's no stopping for years to come from now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome. I'm only like 3 episodes into it, but the quality, you can tell the difference between the prologue, then the second episode, and then the third. You really see the huge difference between everything else.
Yeah, that's one of those things is even though we've got this new recording stuff, we've got to I run everything and I've got to learn this stuff, which is hard to do without having recordings. But if we didn't start with those recordings, then people would have a loss in the story like they already have with the first segment of the show that we cut out. So hopefully there's going to be a continuous improvement in audio quality up until I get everything kind of dialed in to where I know exactly what I need to do every time we sit down to play.
Actually, it sounds good though, but
yeah, I'm glad that you think so.
Yeah, no, it's like I've listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I've listened because I work third shift at Kellogg's, so it's every once in a while on my break I want to listen to something, and I usually listen to podcasts. And I saw a post you put on DungeonFog because I just got done doing an interview with Till, and I was like, well, that sounds familiar. So I went ahead and just started. I looked you guys up, listened to the first couple ones, then I emailed you see if you wanted to be on the show because you use DungeonFog, and you're paid. You did the Kickstarter for it, so I wanted.
Oh yeah, I was a very early backer for DungeonFog. Till actually reached out to me before the Kickstarter had even started. I had made some post on Twitter that he must have found somehow that was just like, hey, other DMs, like I want to get I want to make maps instead of just having stuff on graph paper that I redraw. Like, what's out there that is like simple point and click? Because I don't have the time or the skills to get into Photoshop or GIMP like all these real professional guys get into.
Yeah.
And DungeonFog reached out to me on Twitter and was just like, hey, we've got this thing coming up on Kickstarter that you might really be interested in. So like day one, I was a backer. Thankfully, I had a bonus come through before the end of the Kickstarter was over, and I was able to bump myself up to like their top lifetime tier.
Nice. Yeah, I was all the things that he's shown so far, and our actual next interview, we're hoping that by the time the GM notes are ready, that's when the next one will be, and we'll do an update for the GM notes. So,
yeah, I saw. I mean, just yesterday. I mean, we're night shift guys, so it's kind of yesterday for most people that the next update just got pushed out, and they're thinking about getting into beta soon. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like those GM notes are like maybe 2 weeks away, maybe a month away.
Yeah, it's a good amount of it's around there. I mean, we did the interview, we did talk about it, and right now they're in the phase 3, or they just got done with phase 2, and now they're launching phase 3, and I believe at phase 4 they're going to be, the GM notes should be starting. So it's going to be something really cool to see, and it's definitely different than anything out there.
And it's already come a long way, like just from the map creation perspective. Like I got in once alpha V0.1 came out, and just some of the things that they've managed to do in the short time that they've been working on the alpha. I'm excited to see where this is going to be in like 6 months to a year when things are release ready. And yeah, those DM notes I'm really looking forward to, just for helping create that flavor text.
Oh yeah, and I think it's going to make a huge difference in the way a lot of people run their games, especially if people don't have great Photoshop skill like me and
like me. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is I've realized while editing my own episodes that even if I visualize something in my head, I'm terrible about giving a spoken description of like a room. I realized in one of the episodes that I was like, yeah, and you've got like a table, and like that table's got like 4 chairs, and there's like a rug and like a torch. And so I'm looking forward to the way that they're supposed to have these dynamic DM notes.
Yeah.
It'll create text that doesn't sound like you don't know how to talk anymore.
Yeah, I think I like you said, Critical Role. I'm a huge fan of Critical Role. I like them. I've since episode 25, I started watching them. So I literally been. I was a. I don't sub to Mitch Twitch channels, so I actually was only the one I subbed to was theirs.
Yeah, I'm super late on the Critical Role game. I just started finally getting into them when they finally released as a podcast instead of just the Twitch thing, because with my job I can listen to podcasts pretty much all night.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to do the video thing, but now that they're coming out as an audio podcast, I'm starting to work my way through.
Oh yeah, no, they just started that recently, didn't they?
It was like 4 months ago, I think. They're working pretty quick. They've got like 80 episodes or something already on the podcast feed.
Yeah, there's someone else already out there who took it's a Critter fan who actually took them all and just started making audio files and putting them up for people who couldn't listen to them. So it's actually kind of cool. So then I guess Geek and Sundry saw what they were missing and it's like, all right, we'll hurry up and do this.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're doing it, because there's people out there that would be interested but can't do the video thing, especially like me. I don't, especially now that I'm running a podcast, I don't do a lot of media consumption at home, like, so I can't do that kind of bandwidth usage when I'm on my phone. So
yeah.
I'm glad that I can like download these episodes. I can throw them in my playlist at work and listen to a couple of them, especially because like I'm a huge fan of Matt's work. Just being in the D&D scene without really being like watching Critical Role. You hear about Matt Mercer. You hear about how he is. People share clips of his descriptions and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, that makes me sad at being a DM, because just like the way he describes something makes me kind of like sad to myself. Is like I want to do that, but I know every time I try to, it goes horribly wrong.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that I've been doing listening to it. Is I'm listening for the story, but a lot of it too is I'm listening to hear how Matt does it, because obviously with how popular Critical Role is, he bottled lightning with his style.
Oh yeah, God yeah. So how long have you been DMing yourself? Like
DMing myself, I've only been DMing at this point about a year.
Okay.
I spent probably 8 months or so working on kind of the beginning grounds of the world, because for some reason I didn't want to run like modules. I wanted to do something that I created myself. So I spent a while building the groundwork and only been running for about a year. And I played for about 2 years before that.
Okay. So the total. So when did you start? When did you get into D&D? Like,
I got into D&D. Oh, that would have been probably 2013 or so. A high school friend of mine, him and I, we started playing Magic together, Magic the Gathering. And one of the groups that he played Magic with, I got integrated into that group. And then a couple, like probably a year and a half of playing Magic together, they moved over to Pathfinder, and we phased out playing Magic and we started playing Pathfinder together. And that was kind of my indoctrination to the tabletop RPG hobby.
Mm-hmm. I did. I was in. I started in 3.5, like a while ago, a long time. So yeah, it's about the same system though. The 3.5 in Pathfinder.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure why it took that long. I guess it's just, even though I've always been into like the nerdier stuff, I've always been really into video games. And I think a lot of what it was at the time I didn't have any friends that I thought would be into like D&D, so I never got into it myself. We were just video gamers.
Yeah, which I understand that. I mean, I didn't really play as much as I wish I would have, because like again, everyone, you go out there like, well, I just don't have any friends that really think it's cool, and I don't want to be that guy who says like, "Hey, you guys want to play D&D?" And then they're like, "Nerd."
Yeah. Even the nerds are just like, D&D, what kind of nerd are you?
Now it's it's D&D. It's people like, "Oh, hell yeah, man." Oh, okay.
It's like, oh, that thing that I do is cool now.
Yeah, we're technically that's a hipster. I was playing D&D before it was cool. Um, but yeah, no, I think that a lot of people don't realize that back in the day, yeah, it wasn't that like people didn't see it as cool, and then now it's beginning to get more in the high life because I think like a lot of people are saying like you have a couple of different things that really made this jump out to me D&D wise was Critical Role pushed D&D a little further, but the studies that they've been doing on D&D itself have been showing effects of kids with social anxiety and um, just socialization problems playing D&D, and those problems start drifting away from them.
Yeah, I mean, I can even see that kind of with my own group, the way that we had one of the girls wanted to come just because it's what her boyfriend was going to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how much fun it was, and was just like, oh hey, can I get in on this too? And yeah, just kind of the way that the way that that hobby really ropes you in.
Oh yeah. Well, it's if you like reading books, you like doing things that take you out of your normal spot and put you in someone else's place. I think that's what a lot of people want. They want to be someone different, and D&D allows you to be power. Like if you're not powerful, to be powerful to fight the good fight or just be a complete dick to people. Which I know a lot of players that do that a lot and ruin
I'll
games.
pretend I'm not one of those.
You can pretend, but I have a feeling that you are one of them.
I mean, I've got to be the DM all the time, so when I get
Payback's a
to be a
bitch.
player, I'm gonna play my super chaotic player.
Yeah, I'm not very nice when it comes to the DM sometimes because it's trying to find loopholes in the game is kind of fun, but not pushing the boundary of the DM where he puts you into a situation where you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Yeah, when I'm a player and the guy and we've got our DM, that's kind of the situations that we seem to run into. But I'd like to think that the character that I play for the campaign that I'm playing in and not running is more comic relief than being a total dick.
That works. I mean, it does. So let's see, go through these questions. So are there any tips for anyone who are just now starting to get into D&D or the dungeon master part of D&D that might help them out when they start?
Probably one of my biggest, like, at the very beginning tips, even though I didn't do it, I would suggest at least picking up one of the adventure paths and reading through some of it, running it if you've got a group that would be into that, because especially since especially now that it's a podcast and people might ask questions about the world,
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing how much I haven't fleshed out in my world. And if you are going to go the route that I did with building your own setting,
Mm-hmm.
get it digital from the start. Like, go ahead and write things down in a journal, but make sure you digitize them real quick, because I have probably 20 different notebooks that I have scribbled in. So finding anything before getting it into a digital copy is almost impossible. Even this week, I found a notebook that is missing like 6 pages of stuff that I know I've written down for lore, that I have no idea where those pages went. So if you're gonna build your own thing, then make sure you get it digital. I use OneNote to kind of organize everything, especially because I can have a OneNote for my side of things. I call it my DM journal, and then I've got another OneNote that I'll copy things into for my players,
Mm-hmm.
and you can share a OneNote so that they can see it, they can add things to it. And other than that, just have fun with it. If you don't have a group yet, then find a group of people that you can really open up with and let loose. And especially as a DM, you got to be the one that's going to do the silly voices and stuff to help bring some of the other people out of their shells. And you're kind of the leader, so you need to kind of lead by example and showing that, yeah, it's okay to be silly and have fun.
Oh yeah, and that's, I think a lot of people don't. A lot of the D&D games that I've played and that I've talked to people about is the sheer point of, a lot of them want their players to role play, but not a lot of players like to or are comfortable. How did you get to the point where you could like kind of coax the players into doing more of the role play aspect of the game?
A lot of it from like the very intro level of things, like when we first started playing together, is I just didn't worry about it. Especially since I had a couple years experience and I was really into the role play aspect before. Like I always tried to come up with a voice for my characters, so I try and terribly voice all the NPCs that they interact with. And just I don't worry too much about what they're doing in character, but occasionally you do kind of have to poke them. One of the things that I've started doing a little bit more is if I notice they're talking like out of character and getting really meta about something and try and advance the story, I'll just be like, well, how about you guys discuss this in character then?
Yeah.
And of course, like I said, the leading by example, if you want to like really get them into it, is be animated, be silly. And really what I try and do is I try and make it so that you can't look worse than I do.
Which, yeah, I've been there. I've gotten my guys to really say open up more, which is always fun to do to people. But at the same time, it's always great to see how they react to like I started yelling at one of them in character, and they're like, "Oh, dude, whoa!" And like, at the end of the session, he's like, "Man, that was freaky." I was like, "Yeah, it's."
And then you're just like, yeah, but we're cool because that's all game stuff.
Yeah.
And
he was, after that, he was really into, like, he just like he took the mantle of the character as I was yelling at him, and the other, and he's just like, he loved it. He was like, that was like the best part of the whole thing.
And that's another thing that you can do too, is if you're being in character, directly interact with someone, because it's really hard for your player not to get in character if you're the like little gnome alchemist is just like, well, hello, what would you like to buy? Because it's really hard to like not respond to that, at least in first person. Like if someone comes up to you and does that, like it does that in a game, it's hard as a player to respond with just like, I ask for healing potions. So like directly interfacing and calling out a specific character as a character in the world can help kind of bring them into the world. And like I was saying with not worrying about it, is you can have players that aren't really into the role play and getting into characters, but they still care about the world that's going on. Like even in the podcast, we've got a couple, like they drift in and out of how in character and how role play they are being. But I've definitely had some scenes that finish, and you can see it and you can hear it on the players that like, oh, that meant something to you, even if you weren't acting in character while it was going on.
Yeah. That's I've always thought about the role play aspect just incredibly great, and it's always good to see people who get into it, and then it's okay not to. Like if you don't want to like you don't have to make a silly voice or a different voice for your character. It can be your normal voice.
Oh, yeah, and Chris in the game, his character Sug totally has a voice. He just doesn't realize it. Like I've talked to him about it, and he's like, "No, do the Sug voice." And he's like, "Sug doesn't have a voice. It's just me." And I'm like, "No, I've asked other people. You have a distinct difference when you're talking as Sug, and it's noticeable."
You know what?
Just don't notice.
I kind of noticed that. Sug. I always thought it was weird. I just thought
It's
I
his
heard two.
voice, but he changes like the mannerisms just a little bit, and you can tell the difference between when it's Chris talking and when it's Sug talking.
Yeah. Well, shit. Yeah. So he wasn't doing the voice on purpose. He just like.
No, I mean, I've straight up talked to him about it, and he doesn't realize that he's doing anything different with the way that he talks.
That's cool. That's true method acting right there. That's beyond.
So good at acting, I didn't even realize I was acting.
Hey, it's the best kind of acting. Some people don't even know they're acting. So, I think we got pretty much. So all your whole game is basically just a homebrew, like you made it from scratch. How do you do like loot for your players?
Being honest, I'm a little on the stingier side with loot. I try and use loot to kind of hold back the players into a level that I want them to be. But some of the loot is just me looking through and seeing, okay, what would make sense for this person to have? What would make sense to be in this area? But another thing that I do for loot is another Kickstarter that I backed was a few decks of loot cards that they took, like all of the SRD, the system reference document, the free stuff that they can use from Wizards, and they made them into a physical deck of cards. And they also added in some homebrew stuff, and there's different amounts of them. I backed that one pretty high to get the full collection, and then an extra pack of just some random cards to help mix in and give me more variety.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've done with those is I've tuned them a bit to have like, I'll go through the deck, figure out, okay, what would make sense to be in this area? What isn't like too overpowered to give them right now? Come up with some, like, it's got loot cards of actual gold values and stuff too, and I'll mix those in. And what I'll do is I'll just shuffle one up at the beginning of every session if there's going to be like a good chance for loot, and I'll just draw a couple random ones, and I'll find a way for those to be like, whatever I draw, I'll find a way for it to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of those things, like some of the homebrew stuff, I've actually taken and like tweaked it yet again to make it an actual part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like the episode that I'm working on right now, that's going to come out not this Monday, but next Monday. The end of that episode, a couple of players find some amulets, which I decided that the characters, the fight that they're in, I decided that these people would have these amulets, and all I did was tweak some of the loot cards that I had and like reskin them to be these amulets.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've sort of been working on is, since I played Pathfinder, I've got a bunch of Pathfinder books. So I'm kind of going through those and trying to find other things to add in just to have more loot in the world too, to choose from.
Oh yeah. So the thing you said about the those cards, I actually did something like that because I got tired of trying to figure out like the loot tables and everything. I actually bought, I went to Walmart and picked up the little cards you get to do like your like business cards, and I basically made my own D&D cards. Like loot, everything had the D&D symbol on one side, and the other side would have what the what the item is.
Yeah, and one of the things I like with having the physical cards too is you can give that to the player when they get it. So they have like that reminder that they have this item. They've got that physical card that they can look at
Oh yeah.
and know what they have. And it kind of like, oh, I did get a sword. He just handed me this card and it's a sword.
Yeah. And that's I think a lot of D&D is like, yeah, pen and paper mostly, but the physical stuff is actually what makes it a little bit more interesting for some people. I loved giving a card to one of the players and just watching them just go, oh.
And I've made some homebrew items, and it's always fun when a character gets something and without explaining anything, you just slip a note card across the table with what it is on it.
Oh yeah.
Watch all the eyes at the table turn towards the player. Just, what'd you get?
I'm not telling.
Yep, and that's for whatever reason, 9 times out of 10, you slide that note card face down over to a player. When they all ask, the player's just like, I'm not telling you. This is my secret.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the funnest things to do with players, and to see how far you can go. Now, in your guys' podcast, do you have anybody without throwing their names out there, is there a person in your group who you is your proverbial little bunny rabbit that you like put the carrot out there with the stick?
Not necessarily, because especially since I've been playing with this group for so long and I hang out with them outside of D&D, I kind of know the person's interest enough that I can throw different things out that I can expect I can expect a certain one of them to grab onto a certain thing. But there's also been a couple times, like especially one just recently, I won't say who it was, but I sent one of the players a message over Discord that was just like, you should read up on this. It's going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give them like kind of a tease of this is what's coming up, and also you're gonna have a chance if you want to grab onto it to really kind of take the reins here.
That's actually pretty cool.
And also recently, I since I've been working on world building, and I've been doing this thing that's pretty common just across the board, World Building Wednesday. One of the articles that I did for it, I posted it up for the group, and then I sent one of the group members a private message that was just like, okay, you may not have read this just because I posted it. I'm telling you, you want to read this.
Mm-hmm. Kind of get them to go the right way.
Kind of do that, and a little bit of like, hey, this thing that I did is kind of specifically for you. Or especially in the case of the world building post, was kind of a, this wasn't done for you, but after finishing it up, I realize this is incredibly relevant to you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like this will tell you a little bit about some of your character.
So you do a lot of you have a lot of lore on your world, so to say.
Yes and no. For the most part, I've focused just on the one continent. Largely because I realized that a world needs to be more than just one continent. I've started the high level concepts for some of the other areas, but I've really started buckling down and fleshing out the continent that they're on.
Mm-hmm.
Not only so that if they interact with something, I have stuff prepared for them, but also so I can work on some of the other areas as well. But yeah, back when I worked on a different machine, I was able to pretty much write for my entire shift.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I worked on a much slower pace machine for a while, and for like 3 months I was able to write and draw like all day. And like I said, with the go digital early, is I've got a lot of that that's scattered everywhere, a lot of stuff that's in my head. But I'm slowly working on building the lore of the world itself
Mm-hmm.
and filling in areas that I realize are lacking. And that's why I started doing this world building Wednesday, to kind of highlight things that I didn't realize I was missing.
Mm-hmm. So, how many your episodes of your show? How many? Like, what's the time frame on the releases? Is it like once a week, or is it every other week, or?
Currently we're doing every other week, just because the amount of time that it takes me to edit right now, I can't do weekly. I would absolutely love to get things worked out enough to do a weekly release, but I've tried, and every time I feel like I'm getting ahead, I'll have something like this last session that I was editing that, I mean, I took a 5-hour session and almost cut it in half, and that took a lot of time editing. So the week and a half ahead that I was turned into barely being on time again.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's every other week, and hopefully summer next year we'll have things smoothed out enough to go to a true weekly show.
That'd be kind of cool to see. So, do you like? Is there a certain day that you put out on, or is it just like?
Um, we release on Monday. Um, Ideally, we release at 1 a.m. Pacific on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
That ideal doesn't come through very often, and I'm usually editing an episode up until I go to bed Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and posting an episode and getting all of that dealt with is one of the last things I do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've done in the past is, if I can't get an episode up on time on Monday, I'll usually throw something up just to say, hey, I'm sorry I didn't get this episode done in time. It should be ready by Wednesday. Just
Okay.
to kind of tell people, like, hey, you'd normally be here for an episode. I wasn't able to get the episode done. Check back in a couple days and it should be here.
Well, that's cool. So, every other Monday, maybe on Wednesday, until you get to the point where you're pretty.
So, like, yeah, really what I want to do is I want to have a couple episodes ahead, so that if I run into a hang up like I did with this last session that takes longer, I'll still have episodes ready to post, even if it takes me 2 weeks to do another episode.
Yeah. That's what I believe when we were doing ours, I wanted to get at least 2 sessions ahead, because it made it a lot easier to kind of like space them out, because it's good to be on like a time frame for people, because some people, like, when you put a time frame up, they want it that day.
Mm-hmm.
They'll wait for that day.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really changed when we relaunched our show was, before, when we were recording with the Yeti before the relaunch,
Mm-hmm.
we just kept recording. We had like 8 episodes up, but recordings we had about another year's worth. So one of the things that I did, and that's why we don't play my campaign every week, is one of the things I did was I was like, okay, I can't let us get 3 months ahead on where we are anymore, because to me that makes me overwhelmed. And one of the things that really sucked with that was we weren't able to have any like timely content. Like, if we wanted to give someone a shout out, it's like, well, I'm just going to have to do it in post, because otherwise this shout out's going to be in a year and it's not going to be relevant anymore.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the one. I think that's the downside about doing like a scheduled scheduled uploads, is it's never going to be like today's kind of thing. It's usually a week back, or or maybe a little later because of the time it takes to do editing and post products on it. So
Yeah, and especially the way that I do this is I add in a lot of like music and stuff in post. So my editing style is usually I do a pass through once to cut out some of the chit chat and shorten out the episode itself so that I know how long I'm working with, and that lets me kind of figure out like, okay, this was an hour and 15 minutes. So when I break this up into 2 episodes, I want to break it about an hour and 40 minutes to keep them somewhat even. And then I'll work from there. And then once I split that recording into 2 episodes, I go through and add in music. And the music is an interesting thing because, especially being just kind of a hobbyist, I don't have the money for any royalty music, so I've got to search through a bunch of Creative Commons, and then I don't want it all to sound the same, so I've actually been expanding like my music catalog that I can use in the shows.
There is a site, I can't remember the name of the site off the top of my head, but if you go to tubebuddy.com or search TubeBuddy, me being a YouTuber, doing my YouTube thing, I went ahead and I got their subscription. It's basically it's a service that allows you to make thumbnails for your things and do all this cool stuff. It has analytics and how to make your things better. But what it also has it with the subscription, there's a audio site that literally has thousands of audios that you pay for monthly. But if you have their little I guess it's their subscription, which I pay $4.99 because I'm under so many subscribers and views, that I don't have to worry about paying the $10. But it gives you this thing. You get like 1 free audio a month, but you can get other ones for cheap. But it allows you to get all sorts of music, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and stuff like that is one of the big inspirations for relaunching with a Patreon too, was to not only help cover the hosting costs, but to start paying more artists and being able to pay for more music. Like, I use a lot of stuff that's licensed through the Creative Commons. I've actually got a page on the website, adventuresinaurelia.com/music, which is a list of all of the artists whose content we use and all the licenses that go with them, to kind of give a bit more of a feature and help promote them the way that they help us make our show better. And one of the things that is planned for the Patreon is to be able to support their Patreons and to find other musicians that aren't free. But like, I recently found one on Twitter that does fantasy music, and he has it all on Patreon. So that's another one of those expenses that I want to do, is I want to throw some money his way and be able to use his music in the show too.
Oh, that's awesome.
And something like that TubeBuddy would be another great thing for that too.
Yeah, because it's honestly I've always loved the different little things it allows you to do, but one of the biggest things was the audio things, because I can put music in my background without having to worry about copyright, because everyone will send a copyright thing out there. Just being dead.
And I know you've got a much harder time with that on YouTube, because it's all the YouTube content ID that just does it automatically, and
PUBG hit me. I literally forgot about turning off the audio, and PUBG started playing their music, and it was a stream I did, and literally right after the stream ended, a copyright thing hit me.
Wow.
Like, someone knows that copyright, like, for like this second to this second, but it was like, I guess it was a certain tune in it, that the music, so you have to literally cut out any music of any video game, unless it's like a couple games out there will allow you to use their content no matter what, like Subnautica. They say right on their pet's website, if you want to make a video gameplay of this, You feel free. Music, don't worry about it. Just have fun and show off the game. Show us what you want. So some games will allow you to do that, but some, for the most part, EA, Ubisoft, and
Yeah, it seems to be a bit more of a smaller game dev is more okay with that because that's exposure for them.
oh yeah, but the big games are just a bunch of jerks. But all right, so last bit, and we'll have to actually say goodbye because it is getting a little late, and my son seems to be getting restless. And he's I can hear him screaming. They're not screaming, more just yelling and shaking his cage.
Oh yeah, we got
fun dungeon.
we got a 19-month-old, so I know what that's like when he wakes up.
Oh yeah. Well, wait. Well, I'll give this out because I think this is the funniest thing in the world, and I think anybody who listens to this should understand it. As a parent, my son is 2, and he'll be 3 in 2 months. He says the word sticker, but he cannot say the word stick. He says dick. And it's bad because I've tried to help fix it, but at the same time, I love just the sure audacity of him picking up a stick at my parents' house and going, big stick, and just going, big dick. And it literally is the greatest thing, and it makes me really happy to be a parent. At the same time, it's like always have to teach him other words so he doesn't say words that wouldn't be proper to hear, like the word nickel, and he says nickel now, so we're happy because that was the one word that I was really afraid of because it's a word that I myself I don't like, and it's the very, very. I live out in Kentucky, so it's really not a great word to hear. But yeah, no, he his words are still great, and it's always great to listen to him. And with being a new parent, like this is your first kid?
Yeah, he's our first.
Okay, yeah. So you've experienced most of the joys. Wait until potty training, man.
Oh, we thought he was ready, and then he took a couple steps back.
I know what you mean. My son's still working on it, so it's not hard, it's not difficult, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's definitely more difficult than easy. Girls are easier to potty train. I don't know why.
They don't have to aim like we do.
I know. I helped raise 4 little girls, my sister's kids, and they were easy. And my son is just like, he doesn't want to. Nope. But it's funny watching him just lose it. It's like, no, I gotta clean that up. But so in your opinion right now, with DungeonFog itself, what are your hopes for it? What's making you more excited that getting closer to the actual release after the alpha into the beta?
For me, that there's 2 features that I'm the most excited for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess kind of 3. We talked a lot about the DM notes, so I've got to say that I'm excited for those. But I think the 2 features for the maps themselves that I'm most excited for are when they get the layers figured out so that you can have multiple floors.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got a lot of buildings that I've worked on that, since they don't have multiple floors, I just do each floor like next to the other one on a single map.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to remember which order they go in and how they all line up in my head. So I'm really looking forward to that and being able to just go, okay, level 1 straight up to level 2, everything lines up good. And The other one that I'm really looking forward to is they said that since they changed from, I forget what it was they're using, but I think they're using like WebGL now or something to
Yes.
actually run the platform,
Yes.
is they said that they can go theoretically infinite with map sizes, and the only limitation is the hardware of the people making the maps themselves. So that is the other thing that I'm really looking forward to, because it'll, especially with the layering options, that'll allow you to build like entire towns and cities,
Oh yeah.
as long as you've got a computer powerful enough to generate all of that data. So I'm really looking forward to being able to, like, I've got this town, it's in my head. I don't want to make each individual building on its own thing and have to keep them straight. I can just plot out each building and know exactly how it fits into this town.
Yeah. He when me and Till were talking, the whole thing about I hated the whole, like, the online was really bad part was is I was waiting for it to, like, to render the stuff, and I was like, it take forever. But now that it's running off of the PC's graphics, it's like I can make a map in
Once
10-15 minutes.
once they pushed that out, it was night and day difference for performance on how snappy things were.
Oh yeah.
Like, I actually had an issue of losing a whole map,
Mm-hmm.
and I still had a general idea of how the map looked, and it was a big map. It used almost the whole 100 by 100 canvas that they gave us,
Mm-hmm.
and I recreated it in like half an hour. Just because the tool itself is so simple to use, I was able to just draw out the rooms and redraw the pattern in such short, simple time.
Yeah, that I think this is going to be one of the biggest things that, uh, especially when they get further into it, and like me and him talked about a lot of things they were doing and a lot of things they want to do. So hopefully down the road, if some of this stuff comes through, I'll be really excited for it.
Yeah. One of the other things I'm excited for that I don't know if they're going to be able to do was I pitched to them being able to make blueprints, and I'm really hoping that they'll be able to figure that out. So
What do you mean blueprints?
the way that I pitched it to them is you would, instead of just creating like a building, you would
Mm-hmm.
create a blueprint. And especially for the whole infinite canvas thing, instead of having to draw each building, you've got like your generic, you've got a couple like 15 by 15 houses designed as blueprints, and you just drag them onto the map.
Oh, you're
And
talking about basically like a
kind of a preset, you'd just be able to drag and drop a full item and then customize it instead of having to draw each house if you're doing like a whole neighborhood.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I don't see a real big issue with that. I think they'll be able to do that. I think right now we were talking about art and doing basically being able to upload your own art and stuff. And
Yeah, I can't wait for that, because I know there's a few people on Patreon that do like packs of art that you can use.
Mhm.
If you're supporting them, then you can use those assets. So I'm looking forward to that, because you could subscribe to these people on Patreon. You get these couple hundred items and be able to upload them into your own maps.
Yeah, he's I remember if he told me it's like that's close to around the GM notes, I believe. If I'm not
Sweet.
wrong. So they're working on it, and it's just right now trying to get all the copyright stuff and making sure everything's kosher.
I'm really looking forward to having a timeline from them, like a development timeline, so that we kind of see where all this stuff is
I have it.
gonna be.
I actually have their timeline and all the stuff me and him talked about and what they're shooting for, and it's actually in the video we just did. But for some reason, my audio and the video got corrupted.
Oh,
So me and him are I have to reschedule another interview with him, and we're just gonna go over everything again. And hopefully cut down the time on the last video. It was like an hour and a half we did. And I cut it down to 45 minutes. But as soon as I cut out 45 minutes, I wanted to go to the bathroom. My computer turned off. I came back, turned it back on. The file was completely destroyed. The original file was completely destroyed. So right now I have this interview with you. I have on two different. I have my OBS go in it, and then the actual Zoom meetings allows me to do the recording as well.
Well, hopefully we don't lose this one.
No, I hope not.
I wouldn't mind coming back. Just
well,
hopefully I'm not coming back to do this again.
Oh, yeah, no. This is usually safe if I have both, because I have the Zoom is actually saving on my cloud, my Zoom. So I have that saved there. So if I have to pull it, I pull it from there. But I've now started, as soon as I'm done with the recording, I upload it to my Google Drive. And then it sits on there. So in case anything happens, I have the original copy. Plus, I have a flash drive that I put everything on now, too. So I'm not letting that happen again.
One of the things I like with how we record is we use a digital recorder and everything goes right into a SD card. And then I keep that SD card and I transfer the files into copies. So I've always got that source file, but I branch off of that copy, too.
Yeah. Which it's always good to do. But if I get a chance and I pull up all the information, I'll email you the give you a little heads up when that video is going to come out, so you can actually see when the timeline, all that fun stuff is. And
all right, cool.
But thank you, Damian, for coming out and talking with me. Again, check out his podcast. It is Adventures in Erylia. Did I say it right?
Yes, Erylia, Erylia.
So I'm having
fantasy words.
To start rolling it on my whiteboard back there. But you can check out their podcast on iTunes, on any kind of podcast service. Most of them, I think.
Yeah, Google Play, Stitcher, anything that's pulling from the iTunes library, you'll be able to find it. And our website, adventuresinerylia.com, also just has a player on the website too, if that's how you want to listen to it.
Okay. And I'll have a link below of all the stuff we talked about, to your guys' Patreon, to your website, all that fun stuff. On top of that, the DungeonFog site, if you guys want to check that out. They're still doing pre-orders for the alpha or for the beta. So everyone getting the beta right now still, but right now it's still an alpha. So hopefully when it comes to beta, people who hear this and check it out want to see it. It definitely is something. If you're a DM, you're new, and even if you're an experienced DM and you're not really good at drawing out places, this would be probably the thing for you. So thank you again, Damian, for coming out. And
thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me out here.
Oh, dope. I'm happy you joined us for a little DMBS. And definitely we'll try to get you out here again, maybe down the road when you guys have gotten further into your cast, or if I have any other ideas for the show. I think we might actually have a panel. Basically, I'm going to try to get a panel together.
All right.
And a bunch of different DMs, and I'm going to reach out to a couple more podcast DMs and see if they want to be on, and maybe get a bunch of y'all together and see how what different things are. But I think my next one's going to be a panel for DungeonFog.
Awesome.
Which I'll have I'm going to try to get Till to be on it, and then I'll if you want to, you're more than welcome to join. And then I have a couple more people I'll invite. So it'll be a good panel of everyone talking and just asking DungeonFog, or talking about D&D and basics. Maybe how different rolling up characters and 101 stuff.
That sounds cool.
So, but thank you again for coming out. Again, check out Adventures in Erylia. It's on iTunes in their podcast section. You can go to their adventuresinaurelia.com, check out everything there. And you can listen to there or on the podcast. So wherever you guys want to listen to their it's actually a decent podcast too. Like you guys do a really good job. The editing is actually really flawless. I didn't even know it was edited. I was like, man, they're doing 45-minute sessions. Like, and it was really good. I'm like, that's crazy. So, but thank you again, and I think I have to thank you a lot. So you have a good day, man, and I'll
appreciate it very much.
I'll hopefully get you on here another time, and we can talk about more DungeonFog and more about your campaign and how everyone's doing. So you have a good day, man.
You have a good one.
All right, later.
Later.